She's not fit to even sweep your floors. The mayor's voice cracked like a whip across the town hall, and the laughter that followed was cruel, sharp, and merciless. Hannah stood frozen, her hands trembling against the frayed hem of her dress. Every eye in Dry Creek seemed to pierce her, stripping her dignity, layer by layer. The insult was not new. For years, whispers had followed her widow of a disgraced ranch hand, seamstress who stitched sorrow into every garment. But tonight, the mayor's words carried the weight of final judgment. Hannah's humiliation was complete. Silence fell when a stranger rose from the back of the hall. Elias Kane, broad-shouldered, dust from the trail still clinging to his boots, spoke with a calm authority that silenced the jeers. "I'll make her the richest woman in town." The crowd gasped. The mayor's laughter faltered, replaced by disbelief. Sheriff Colton, loyal hound of the mayor, narrowed his eyes. "Strangers don't meddle in Dry Creek affairs," he warned, his hand resting on the iron badge pinned to his chest. But Elias did not flinch. His gaze held steady on Hannah, as if he saw beyond her shame into the ember of strength buried deep within. Hannah's breath caught. For the first time in years, someone had spoken of her, not as a burden, but as a promise. The mayor sneered. "Richest woman in town? She's not fit to carry water, let alone wealth. You'll waste your fortune on a beggar's pride." The hall erupted again, but this time the laughter was uneasy, fractured by Elias's presence. Hannah's humiliation burned hotter, yet beneath the fire was a flicker of defiance. She wanted to believe him, but disbelief chained her heart. Elias stepped closer, his voice low but firm. "A man's wealth is measured not by gold, but by the dignity he restores. And I intend to restore hers." The sheriff spat tobacco into the dust. "You'll regret this. Dry Creek doesn't take kindly to outsiders stirring trouble." Hannah's eyes darted between them, the mayor's cruelty, the sheriff's threat, and Elias's vow. The hall seemed to close in, walls pressing against her shame. Yet Elias's words lingered, echoing louder than the laughter. The mayor raised his hand, commanding silence. "Mark my words, Kane. This woman will drag you down. She's cursed. Her husband died a coward, and she'll die a beggar. Dry Creek will never honor her." The insult struck like a bullet. Hannah's knees weakened, but Elias's steady presence anchored her. He did not answer the mayor's venom with rage, only with silence, a silence that carried more weight than any insult. The crowd dispersed, whispers trailing into the night. Hannah remained, her humiliation heavy, her hope fragile. Elias approached her gently. "You've carried shame long enough. Let me show you what grit can build." She shook her head, voice trembling. "Why me? Why now?" Elias's reply was simple, almost a whisper. "Because you stood when others bowed." The words lodged deep in her heart. For the first time, Hannah felt the faint stirrings of redemption. The mayor's laughter still echoed, but Elias's vow had planted a seed. Outside, the sheriff watched from the shadows, his jaw tight with menace. The battle lines had been drawn. And so began Hannah's journey from humiliation to redemption, from silence to voice. The town of Dry Creek would never be the same. The night air outside the town hall carried the sting of dust and shame. Hannah walked quickly, head bowed, hoping the darkness would hide her tears. But footsteps followed steady, deliberate. Elias Kane. "You don't have to run from their laughter," he said, voice calm as the prairie wind. Hannah stopped, trembling. "You don't know what it's like. Every day, every glance they remind me, I'm nothing." The mayor's words tonight, they were only the truth. Elias stepped closer, his shadow long against the lantern glow. Truth? No. Cruelty dressed as truth. And cruelty is a coward's weapon. She shook her head. Why speak for me? Why risk their wrath? You don't even know me. Elias's eyes held hers, steady and unyielding. I know enough. I saw a woman stand when others bowed. That's worth more than gold. And I meant what I said. I'll make you the richest woman in town. The words struck her again. Impossible to believe. Richest woman? She could barely afford thread for her seams. Yet his tone carried no jest, no pity, only conviction. From the shadows, Sheriff Colton watched, jaw tight. He spat into the dirt. Strangers don't meddle in Dry Creek. You'll regret this, Kane. Elias turned, his voice low but sharp. I regret nothing that restores dignity. The sheriff's hand brushed the iron badge on his chest. The mayor runs this town. You cross him, you cross me, and she... He jabbed a finger toward Hannah. She's cursed. Her husband died a coward. She'll drag you down. Hannah flinched at the words, shame flooding back. Elias did not answer with rage. Instead, he let silence hang heavy, a silence that unsettled even the sheriff. Finally, Elias spoke. A curse is only a story told by men afraid of a woman's strength. The sheriff's eyes narrowed. You'll find Dry Creek has no patience for outsiders who think they can rewrite stories. He turned and vanished into the night, leaving menace in his wake. Hannah's voice broke. He's right. I'll ruin you. I've been nothing but shame since the day my husband fell. Elias's reply was firm, almost tender. Shame is not who you are. It's what they've chained you to. I intend to break those chains. She stared at him, torn between disbelief and fragile hope. You speak as if wealth can erase humiliation. Elias shook his head. Wealth is only a tool. Redemption comes from standing tall when the world demands you kneel. I'll give you the means, but you must claim the dignity yourself. The words lingered, heavy yet liberating. Hannah felt something stir. Not trust, not yet, but the faintest spark of possibility. The town's laughter still echoed in her mind, but Elias's vow had carved a new sound, a promise. As they walked toward the edge of town, lanterns flickering behind them, Hannah whispered, "If I fall, will you leave me?" Elias's answer was simple. "If you fall, I'll help you rise, but the rising must be yours." The prairie stretched before them, vast and unforgiving. Hannah's humiliation clung like dust, but Elias's vow carried like thunder a storm that promised change. And in the shadows, the sheriff plotted, determined to crush the stranger's vow before it could take root. The prairie wind carried whispers of memory, and Hannah could not silence them. As she walked beside Elias toward the edge of town, her thoughts drifted back to the man she once called husband. Samuel had been strong once, proud in his saddle, but pride had turned to recklessness. A drunken brawl, a coward's retreat, and then a death that left Hannah branded with his shame. The town never forgave her. They said Samuel's disgrace was hers to carry. Every stitch she sewed, every coin she earned, was shadowed by the curse of his name. And tonight, the mayor's laughter had torn open wounds she thought had scarred. Elias broke the silence. "You keep looking back, Hannah. The past is ashes. Ashes don't bind you unless you clutch them." She flinched at his words. "Easy for you to say. You ride in with wealth and grit. I've lived years with nothing but whispers and shame." Elias's gaze was steady. Wealth doesn't erase scars. Grit does. And scars can be proof you survived. They reached the hitching post where Elias's horse waited, a tall chestnut stallion with eyes like fire. He held out his hand. "Ride with me. The ranch is where we'll start." Hannah hesitated. She had not ridden since Samuel's death. The saddle was a reminder of loss, of humiliation, but Elias's hand did not waver. Slowly, she placed her palm in his, feeling the callous strength of a man who had lived through storms. The ride began awkwardly. Hannah clutched the reins too tightly, her body stiff with fear. The prairie stretched wide, unforgiving, every hoofbeat echoing her doubt. Elias rode beside her, calm, silent, letting the rhythm of the land speak. After miles of silence, he finally said, "The land doesn't care about shame. It only respects grit. Keep your eyes forward." Hannah lifted her gaze. The horizon burned gold with the setting sun, vast and endless. For the first time, she felt the weight of her humiliation loosen, replaced by something unfamiliar possibility. She whispered, almost to herself, "Samuel's disgrace will always follow me." Elias's reply was sharp, cutting through the wind. "Only if you let men like Harlan write your story, you can write your own." The words struck deep. Could she? Could a seamstress, mocked and broken, rewrite her story? As they approached Elias's ranch, Hannah saw the sprawling fences, the cattle grazing, the barn standing tall against the dusk. It was a world far removed from her small, dim room in town, a world where dignity might be rebuilt. Elias dismounted, offering his hand again. "This is where you begin, not as a beggar, not as a curse, as a woman who refuses to bow." Hannah's heart pounded. She stepped down, her boots sinking into the dust of Elias's land. The ranch smelled of sweat, leather, and promise. For the first time in years, she felt something stir. Not wealth, not pride, but the faintest ember of strength. The ashes of the past still clung, but Elias's words carried like thunder. Ashes could be scattered, and from them, new fire could rise. Hannah stood taller, though her voice trembled. "I don't know if I can." Elias's answer was simple. "You will, because you must." And in that moment, beneath the prairie sky, Hannah's journey truly began. Dry Creek was a town that thrived on whispers. By morning, the mayor's laughter had already spread from the hall to the saloon, from the saloon to the mercantile, and from the mercantile to every porch where women stitched and men spat tobacco. Hannah's humiliation became the town's entertainment. "She's cursed," muttered one ranch hand. "Her husband died a coward, and now she clings to a stranger's promise." "Richest woman in town?" scoffed another. "She'll be lucky if she can keep her sewing needle from rusting." The words stung, carried on the wind like thorns. Hannah kept her head down, but every step through town felt heavier. Elias walked beside her, silent, his presence a shield against the jeers. Yet even his silence could not drown the whispers. Sheriff Colton found her outside the mercantile, his boots grinding dust into the earth. "You think Kane can save you? He's a fool, and you," his eyes narrowed, "you'll drag him down. The mayor won't let you rise. Dry Creek won't let you rise." Hannah's voice trembled. "Why do you hate me so much? I've done nothing but survive." The sheriff leaned close, his breath sour. "Survival isn't enough. This town feeds on strength, and you've got none. Best you stay in the shadows." Elias stepped forward, his tone sharp. "Enough, Colton. You speak of strength, yet you hide behind another man's power. That's not strength. That's servitude." The sheriff's jaw tightened, but he said nothing more. He spat into the dust and walked away, leaving menace in his wake. Hannah's knees weakened, shame pressing hard, but Elias's words lingered. Servitude, cowardice, cruelty dressed as strength. Later that day, as Hannah carried fabric through town, a group of women blocked her path. One sneered, "Careful, Hannah, don't let your cursed hands touch the cloth. Might ruin it." The old Hannah would have lowered her head, swallowed the insult, and walked away. But something stirred Elias's vow, his silence, his grit. She stopped, her voice trembling but audible. My hands may be cursed to you, but they've stitched every shirt your husbands wear. If ruin follows me, it follows you too. The women blinked, startled. One scoffed, but the others fell silent. Hannah walked past, her heart pounding, her breath uneven. It was small, fragile, but it was defiance. That night, Elias found her at the ranch staring at the horizon. You spoke today, he said. Hannah nodded, uncertain. It wasn't much. Elias's reply was firm. It was enough. Every voice begins as a whisper. Yours will grow. She looked at him, doubt still heavy. The town will never forgive me. Elias's gaze was steady. Forgiveness is not what you need. Respect is. And respect is earned when you refuse to bow. The prairie wind carried his words, and Hannah felt them settle deep within. The whispers of Dry Creek still echoed, but tonight, for the first time, she had answered back. It was not redemption yet, but it was the first spark of resilience. And sparks, Elias knew, could grow into fire. The ranch gathering was meant to be small, a few neighbors, a few ranch hands, a chance for Elias to show that Hannah's work had value. Yet word spread quickly, and by dusk half of Dry Creek had arrived, curiosity burning, hotter than the lanterns strung across the barn. Hannah stood at the center, clutching the ledger she had kept with trembling hands. For weeks she had stitched, traded, and managed accounts under Elias's guidance. Tonight she would show the numbers proof that her labor carried worth. Her voice faltered at first. These are the profits from the last month. Cloth sold, cattle tended, debts cleared. It may not be much, but it is honest. The crowd murmured. Some nodded, surprised. Others smirked, waiting for Humiliation to return. Then the barn doors slammed open. Mayor Harlan strode in, his boots echoing like thunder. His sneer was sharp, his voice dripping venom. Profits? Ledger? This is a beggar dressed in borrowed pride. You think numbers can erase disgrace? The crowd laughed uneasily. Hannah's hands shook, the ledger nearly slipping from her grasp. Shame surged, threatening to drown her. But Elias stepped forward, his voice calm, cutting through the noise. The richest soul is the one that refuses to bow. The words hung heavy, silencing the laughter. Hannah's breath steadied. She looked at the ledger again, and for the first time, she saw not numbers, but proof of her resilience. The mayor scoffed. You'll never be more than a seamstress cursed by her husband's cowardice. Hannah's voice trembled, but she spoke. And yet this seamstress has turned cloth into coin, coin into dignity. If that is a curse, then I will carry it proudly. The crowd shifted. Some whispered in awe, others in shame. The mayor's sneer faltered, though his eyes burned with rage. Elias placed a hand on Hannah's shoulder, steadying her. You've carried scars the world cannot see, but scars are not weakness. They are proof you endured. And then, woven into the moment, came the call that reached beyond the barn, beyond Dry Creek. And just like Hannah, many of us carry scars the world cannot see. If you've felt her pain, ride with us in true Western stories where every tale finds its voice. The words did not break the story's rhythm. They flowed with it, a bridge between Hannah's struggle and the audience's own. The mayor snarled, but the crowd no longer laughed. Some looked at Hannah with respect, others with unease. The sheriff lingered at the edge, his jaw tight, his plotting deepening. Hannah closed the ledger, her hand steadier now. This is not wealth yet, but it is a beginning, and beginnings matter. Elias's gaze was proud, though silent. He knew the battle was far from over. The mayor would not relent. The sheriff would not rest, but tonight Hannah had stood. The barn lights flickered against the prairie night, casting shadows that seemed to whisper of storms yet to come. And in those shadows, Hannah felt something new. Not humiliation, not fear, but the first taste of pride. The prairie night was restless, the wind carrying unease like a warning. Hannah worked late at Elias's ranch, stitching by lantern light, but her hands trembled. She could feel it. The sheriff's shadow pressing closer. Sheriff Colton had not forgotten Elias's defiance. He appeared at the ranch gate one evening, his badge glinting under the moon. His voice was low, venomous. "You think you can build her up, Kane? You're wasting your time. Shame doesn't wash off. It stains." Elias stepped forward, calm but firm. "Stains fade when grit wears them down. You mistake humiliation for destiny." Colton's eyes narrowed. "Destiny? Her destiny is ruin. And yours will be tied to it if you keep meddling." Hannah stood behind Elias, her breath shallow. The sheriff's words cut deep. Reopening wounds she had tried to stitch closed. She wanted to shrink, to vanish, but Elias's presence steadied her. The sheriff spat into the dust. "The mayor won't let her rise, and neither will I. Dry Creek belongs to men who know their place. She doesn't." Elias's silence was heavier than any retort. Colton sneered, unsettled, then turned and disappeared into the night. But his shadow lingered, a threat that hung over the ranch like storm clouds. Later, Hannah sat by the fire, her voice trembling. "He's right. I'll drag you down. Every step I take, they'll push harder. I can't fight them." Elias crouched beside her, his tone softer now. "Fear is natural, but fear is not final. You've already stood against whispers. You've already spoken when silence was easier. That is strength." She shook her head. "Strength feels so far away. All I feel is shame." Elias's reply was quiet, almost tender. "Shame is the scar left by cruelty, but scars prove survival, and survival is the seed of strength." The firelight flickered across Hannah's face, illuminating the conflict within her. She wanted to believe him, but the sheriff's shadow loomed large. The next day, Sabotage struck. Fences were cut, cattle scattered, and whispers spread that Hannah had cursed the ranch. The sheriff's men had left their mark. Hannah's hands shook as she tried to mend the damage. "They'll never stop. Every step forward, they'll drag me back." Elias joined her, hammering posts into the earth. His voice was steady. "Then we keep building. Every time they tear down, we rise again. That's grit. That's how redemption is won." Hannah looked at him, her doubt colliding with his conviction. For the first time, she saw not just wealth in Elias, but resilience, a man who refused to bow, even when shadows pressed close. That night, as the prairie quieted, Hannah whispered, "Why do you fight for me? You could walk away." Elias's gaze held hers, unwavering, "Because dignity is worth fighting for, and because you deserve to see yourself as more than shame." Her breath caught. The sheriff's shadow was still there, heavy and menacing. But Elias's words lit a small flame inside her, fragile, flickering, but real. Fear lingered, but tenderness had begun to carve its place. And in the quiet of the ranch, Hannah realized, shadows could stretch long, but they could not extinguish fire. The prairie sky darkened with heavy clouds, as if the land itself sensed the storm brewing in Dry Creek. Hannah worked at Elias's ranch, her hands steady on the loom, but her heart restless. She could feel it, the mayor's wrath gathering like thunder. Word spread quickly. The annual cattle auction was approaching. It was the town's grandest event, where fortunes were made and reputations destroyed. And this year, Mayor Harlan intended to use it as his weapon. In the saloon, he spoke loudly, his voice dripping with malice. She thinks she can rise? She thinks she can stand beside men of worth? At the auction, I'll strip her of every coin, every ounce of pride. She'll crawl back to her sewing table, broken. The townsfolk laughed, though uneasily. Some pitied Hannah, others relished the spectacle. The sheriff leaned against the bar, his smirk cold. We'll rig the bids. She won't stand a chance. Back at the ranch, Elias sensed the storm. He found Hannah staring at the horizon, her face pale. They're planning something, he said. The auction will be their battlefield. Hannah's voice trembled. Then I'll lose. I can't fight them. I'm only a seamstress. They'll crush me. Elias's reply was sharp, steady. You're more than a seamstress. You've already stood against whispers. You've already faced their laughter. This is no different, only louder. She shook her head, doubt heavy. Laughter is one thing, but money, power, schemes, I can't outmatch them. Elias stepped closer, his tone softer now. You don't need to outmatch them. You need to outlast them. Grit is not about winning every battle. It's about refusing to bow, even when the storm rages. The words lingered, but fear clung tight. Hannah remembered the mayor's sneer, the sheriff's threats, the town's whispers. Could she truly stand against them? That night she dreamed of Samuel, her late husband, his disgrace, his cowardice. She woke in tears, whispering, I'll fail, just as he did. Elias found her at dawn, her eyes red. He crouched beside her, his voice low. Samuel's fall is not yours. His cowardice does not define you. You are not bound to his ashes. Hannah's breath caught. She wanted to believe him, but doubt gnawed. What if I fall? What if I prove them right? Elias's gaze was steady. Then you rise again. Redemption is not about never falling. It is about refusing to stay down. The prairie wind carried his words, and Hannah felt them settle deep within. The storm was coming, but Elias's conviction was a shield. By evening, rumors reached the ranch. The mayor had gathered allies, men eager to see Hannah humiliated. The sheriff spread whispers that she would be ruined, that Elias's wealth would vanish in shame. Hannah stood at the fence, watching the cattle graze. Her voice was quiet, almost a whisper. They want me broken. Elias's reply was firm. Then give them silence. Silence is stronger than their laughter. Stand tall and let them choke on their own cruelty. The clouds thickened overhead, shadows stretching across the land. Hannah's doubt clashed with Elias's determination, fear colliding with grit. The gathering storm was not just in the sky. It was in Dry Creek, in the mayor's schemes, in Hannah's heart. And soon the storm would break. The annual cattle auction was more than commerce. It was spectacle. Dry Creek gathered in full force. Men in dusted hats, women in faded dresses, all eager to watch fortunes rise and reputations fall. For Hannah, it was the crucible, the place where the mayor intended to break her once and for all. Mayor Harlan stood tall at the front, his voice booming. Tonight we'll see who belongs in Dry Creek and who doesn't. Some think shame can be erased with coin. Let's prove them wrong. The crowd laughed, cruel and eager. Hannah's heart pounded as she clutched her ledger, her palms slick with sweat. Elias stood beside her, silent, his presence steady as stone. The auction began. Cattle were paraded, bids shouted, coins exchanged. When Hannah stepped forward to place her first bid, the mayor's men moved quickly, raising prices beyond reason, rigging the game. She's reaching too high, one man jeered. She'll fall harder than her husband ever did. The words cut deep, But Hannah steadied herself. She raised her voice clear and sharp. I may fall, but I will rise. And every rise will shame those who tried to keep me down. The crowd murmured. Some scoffed, others shifted uneasily. The mayor sneered, determined to crush her spirit. Bid after bid, the mayor's allies tried to bankrupt her. Yet Hannah countered with wit, refusing to be baited. She withdrew when prices soared, then struck when opportunities opened. Her timing sharp, her resolve unflinching. Elias leaned close, whispering, You're reading the room. That's grit. Keep steady. The sheriff smirked from the sidelines, his eyes cold. She won't last. Pride always breaks. But Hannah did not break. Each bid became a declaration, each coin a symbol of defiance. The crowd began to shift, whispers turning from mockery to awe. At one point, the mayor raised his voice, mocking her openly. You think you can stand among men of wealth? You're a seamstress, a widow, a curse. This auction will bury you. Hannah's reply was sharp, her voice carrying across the barn. I am a seamstress, yes. And with these hands I've stitched more worth than your laughter ever held. Wealth is not in coin alone. Wealth is in dignity, and tonight, dignity will not bow. The barn fell silent. Even the auctioneer paused, his gavel hovering. The mayor's sneer faltered, though his rage burned hotter. He pushed harder, his men bidding recklessly, determined to strip Hannah of every chance. But Hannah held firm. She chose her battles, her bids precise, her resolve unshaken. By the end of the night, she had secured cattle enough to prove her worth. Not riches yet, but victory and dignity. The crowd erupted, some in awe, others in shame. The whispers of Dry Creek had shifted. No longer was Hannah merely the widow of disgrace. She was the woman who stood against humiliation and refused to bow. Elias's smile was quiet, proud. You've turned their game into your ground. That's how storms are weathered. Hannah's breath was steady now. The auction had not broken her. It had forged her. The mayor's shadow still loomed, but tonight, Hannah had shown the town that humiliation could be met with grit, and grit could carve redemption. The auction of souls had ended, and Hannah's soul had risen. The cattle auction had ended, but the barn still hummed with tension. Mayor Harlan was not finished. He strode to the center, his boots pounding against the wooden floor, his sneer sharp as a blade. You think tonight proves anything? He spat, his voice echoing. You're still nothing, Hannah. A seamstress cursed by disgrace. You'll never belong among men of worth. The crowd stirred, whispers rising. Some nodded, others shifted uneasily. Hannah stood at the edge, her hands clenched around the ledger she had carried all night. Her humiliation threatened to return, the weight of years pressing hard. The mayor's voice grew louder, crueler. You're not fit to sweep floors, not fit to carry water, not fit to stand in this hall. You're a beggar dressed in borrowed pride. The words struck like bullets, but Hannah did not bow. She stepped forward, her voice trembling at first, then steady, carrying across the barn. I may not be fit to sweep your floors, she said, her eyes locked on the mayor, but I am fit to own the ground you walk on. The barn fell silent. The crowd froze, the insult shattered by her defiance. Her words carried not just strength, but truth, a truth that pierced deeper than the mayor's cruelty. Elias's gaze was proud, though silent. He knew this was Hannah's moment, her redemption forged in fire. The mayor faltered, his sneer breaking. He tried to laugh, but the sound was hollow, weak. The crowd no longer followed him. Their eyes were on Hannah, their whispers shifting from mockery to awe. One ranch hand muttered. She stood. She spoke. She didn't bow. Another whispered, maybe she's not cursed. Maybe she's stronger than all of us. The sheriff's jaw tightened, his smirk fading. He had no words to counter her. Hannah's voice rose again, steady now, filled with grit. You've mocked me, shamed me, tried to bury me, but shame is not destiny. Dignity is. And tonight, dignity stands. The crowd erupted not in laughter, but in silence, heavy with respect. Some bowed their heads, others looked away in shame. The mayor's power cracked, his authority weakened. Elias stepped beside her, his voice low but carrying. Redemption is not given. It is claimed. And tonight, she has claimed it. Hannah's breath was steady, her heart pounding with triumph. For years she had carried humiliation, but tonight she had turned it into strength. The mayor tried one last time, his voice desperate. You'll never be rich. You'll never be more than a seamstress. Hannah's reply was sharp, final. Riches are not in coin alone. Riches are in dignity, in grit, in the refusal to bow. And tonight, I am richer than you will ever be. The barn shook with silence, a silence heavier than any laughter. The mayor's face burned with rage, but he could not answer. Hannah stood tall, her redemption complete. The humiliation that had haunted her was gone, replaced by pride, dignity, and strength. The crowd dispersed slowly, whispers trailing into the night, but the whispers had changed. No longer curses, no longer mockery, only awe. Elias smiled, his silence carrying more weight than words. Hannah had risen, and Dry Creek would never forget it. The dust of the auction still lingered in the air, but Dry Creek felt changed. The laughter that once followed Hannah had quieted, replaced by the whispers of respect. Men who had jeered now tipped their hats. Women who had mocked now lowered their eyes. The town had seen humiliation turned into strength. It could not be forgotten. Mayor Harlan walked through the streets. His sneer cracked, his authority weakened. He barked orders, tried to rally his allies, but the crowd no longer followed. His voice had lost its power. The sheriff, once smug, now kept to the shadows, his badge heavy on his chest. Hannah stood at the edge of Elias's ranch, the prairie stretching wide before her. She breathed deeply, the air carrying not shame but freedom. For years she had bowed under the weight of disgrace, but tonight she stood taller than she ever had. Elias joined her, his silence steady, his presence grounding. He did not need to speak. His pride was clear in the way he looked at her. Hannah had claimed her redemption, and Elias knew it belonged to her alone. She whispered almost to herself, I thought I would always be cursed, but tonight I saw that curses are only chains men forge to keep women bowed. Elias's reply was quiet but firm. Chains break when grit refuses to yield. You broke them. The prairie wind carried his words, and Hannah felt them settle deep within. She had not only survived humiliation, she had transformed it. Her scars were no longer marks of shame, but proof of endurance. The town gathered days later, not to mock, but to listen. Hannah spoke, her voice steady. Humiliation is not destiny. Redemption belongs to those who refuse to bow. I may have been mocked, cursed, broken, but tonight I stand, and I will keep standing. The crowd was silent, moved by her words. Some nodded, others wept quietly. Dry Creek had been taught a lesson it would not forget. Dignity cannot be buried by cruelty. Elias stood beside her, his silence a shield, his presence a reminder that grit and compassion could walk hand in hand. And woven into the moment, carried like a rider's call across the prairie, came the soft closure. This was one of many true Western stories. If it stirred your heart, saddle up with us for the next ride. The words did not break the rhythm. They flowed with it, a gentle invitation. a promise that more tales of grit and redemption awaited. As the sun dipped low, painting the sky in hues of fire and ash, Hannah looked out across the land. She was no longer the widow of disgrace, no longer the seamstress mocked by whispers. She was a woman who had stood against humiliation and claimed her dignity. The mayor's laughter was gone. The sheriff's threats were hollow. Dry Creek had changed, and Hannah had changed with it. Her journey was not over, but tonight it had found closure. And in the silence of the prairie, beneath the fading light, Hannah whispered to herself, "I am fit to own the ground they walk on." The words carried into the wind, into the hearts of those who listened, into the legacy of a town that had witnessed humiliation transformed into redemption. True Western closure had been written not in coin, not in power, but in dignity.